Hello and welcome, art lovers. This is Figure Study, where we appreciate the form in Transformers. And today I'm looking at another third party piece, an unofficial, non Hasbro, non Takara one, if you will. This is the Perfect Effect PE12 Assault Force X. It's sort of a. It's one of a couple of different takes on the reflector set that Perfect Effect has done. The original one was much more cartoon accurate. It was purple and green and white. This set is, as I understand it, much more accurate to the coloration of the toy, the original Hasbro toy for Reflector, and it's a camera, or at least it's supposed to look like a camera. And it's tiny. It's actually very tiny. It's a little difficult to get across here, but if I have my hand right next to it, that's a tiny camera, but it looks really nice. There's a lot of little coloration and detail to it that I can definitely appreciate. There's this nice telephoto lens with the silver around the outside, all these little details that are picked out all along the lens. Well, technically that's the lens, but you know what I mean. The front looks nice. Some of the paint is a little bit almost chipped and worn looking. I'm not sure if that was intentional or if it's just bad luck on my part. I imagine this little splotch here is just bad luck on my part. But it comes with lots of little details. The viewfinder up here, which actually on the back does have a unfortunately slightly blotched window. It's a nice looking it's a nice looking little camera, despite being way too tiny to be like a real SLR kind of camera. I do like the black and the silver and it's not really, I guess it's sort of black. The black and the silver and this slightly darker silver, this nice metallic red, the grays here. It's a really nice color scheme overall. And like this yellowish gold that they have is really nice. On the side here, a little bit more details. Now from the back, and I'm going to get into this more once we actually have this thing transformed, but you can see a little bit different here. And this is where the similarities from the toy as opposed to the cartoon come in, where they've got these more individual looking chest plates. But they're very nicely colored. Still more paint splotches, though. That's bothersome. But yes, it's overall just a really nice looking tiny camera. And it's really neat. I mean, I seriously enjoy this little thing. But the robot modes are where it's really at. So I'm going to change this from a camera to a trio of really cool looking robots and go into a lot more detail there because, a camera is ultimately just a brick. It's a brick with a lens, a viewfinder, a flash, and a tripod. Not a whole heck of a lot I can say about it in this mode, but it does look nice. So anyway, going to change these into robots and be right back. Okay, so here we have, I'm doing things a little bit differently here, so this is just sort of stage one, if you will. Here we have Assault Force X, mostly transformed into their general robot modes, but what's interesting about this, and I'll get into this later, is all of these little accessories, these all actually become pretty important components to this set. It's very, very nice. So I wanted to stop here just for a moment so that you could see just the individual pieces themselves, and just how fascinating, like just how cool all this is. They're very tiny too. Like doing the hand comparison again, you can see they're not super tall, but there's some really nice detail on them. Now you can sort of make out like the added details on the fists, on the thighs, the shoulders. Nice looking face there. A little bit of detail that carries into the back. The legs are a bit hollow, but you know, it's because of the transformation. The arms, when they form their little cubes, the arms actually tuck in there. But one of the reasons, aside from the fact that this was the set that I could actually get my hands on, one of the reasons I really actually prefer this one is because of the fact that each of the bots actually looks like an individual. Like here we've got, again, completely different chest, completely different head. Similar arms and legs. But just the fact that they all look so different is something that I really appreciate. This guy is the closest to the original Reflector set in that he's got the same kind of chest here with the little fake aperture shutter in there. He also has probably the most generic face, but he's still really cool. And they look really nice. And just to make sure I actually mention the names, we've got Vanguard, Cannoneer, and Sniper. And all that stuff's going to come into play once I get all this other stuff changed up. And now I know I've said in the past that I try to avoid covering accessories, but in the case of these guys, the accessories are actually essential to the camera mode, and they also give each of these three even more individuality, which I think is really cool. So, I'm going to come back with these three all decked out. Okay, so do this from in order of my least favorite to most favorite, because why not? And we have Sniper, Cannoneer, you want to become my least favorite now, buddy? Cannoneer and Vanguard. And this is why these accessories are important. I mean, I do really appreciate, again, the fact that each of the bots is individual looking as opposed to the other sets, and I think that's really great. But once you add these extra components, which at one time were the camera lens, the viewfinder, sides of the camera lens, the tripod, the base of the camera, like all of these components break apart and reconfigure to become things like shoulder pads and backpacks and guns, and it's just so cool, and it gives each robot a much more distinct look. And while I'm not the biggest fan of Sniper out of the whole set, it's just the amount of extra personality that these accessories add, like the fact that he's got these big rocket launcher shoulder pads and the sniper rifle and this huge riot shield that actually does have a hole, like a little eye slit that they can potentially peer through. It's really neat. The backs are even a little bit more fleshed out with just, the backs of the shoulders kind of add a little bit more detail. Everybody gets this little combat knife sheath that attaches to their backside. It's just so cool. And the colors are just great. Like I love the metallic-y red on Sniper, like I've said, and it's kind of spread throughout the other characters as well. But like also just these like metallic-y silver and the darker silver and the lighter gray, and it all just comes together so nicely. Stand up. Stand up. Good enough. Yeah. And with the Cannoneer here, it adds a really interesting element, like the machine gun or minigun that actually does rotate that was once the camera tripod, which is just fantastic. And this, what was once a lens, that's now a jetpack, but if you wanted, could also be turned around and brought together like this. Sorry. Like this. And it almost looks like an ammo drum for the gun. There's just so many options. All of them cool. And I mean, all of these pieces and components are interchangeable too. So if you wanted to, you could give more gear to someone else and just mix and match in any way you see fit. But Vanguard is definitely my favorite. I think I just like the slightly more muted palette that he has with the the slightly darker green. There's a lot less metallic on him. It's mostly just, this kind of darker gray at the knees as opposed to the bright red. He just has these little patches of red here. And I love his, despite the genericness, I think his face is really cool. The armor that he has is great. He's got these really cool, riot pads on his forearms, these shoulders, and he's dual wielding these very large rifles that the rifles themselves are actually detailed and painted pretty nicely, especially considering the fact that they're a little bit more than an inch long. The tininess, I think, is part of the reason why I'm impressed by this set as much as I am, because they managed to pack a lot of detail and a lot of personality into just this really tiny collection of figures. But it's not just that. I mean, if these were slightly bigger, I still think they'd be really cool. It's just, I love this fact that not only do each of the bots have a little bit of an individual look to them, but once you deck them out with all of these other accessories, it makes them even more stand out. Even though all three of them combine to make one tiny little camera, they all look unique. Each one could basically be its own figure, which is just really, really cool to me. And I love that, and this is kind of going into the mechanics of it over the design, but I just love that all of these little pieces, these little bits are just, this looks like a minigun. But when you disconnect it and attach it to the base of the camera, it looks like a tripod. It's such a clever design. And the way that it all just comes together is just really impressive. This is a set that I would probably buy multiples of if I had the money to burn, because it's just so cool. And I highly recommend that anyone who's interested just check it out, because this is really, really cool. This is easily one of the top 3 in my collection at this point. Not all 3 of them together, not each one is one of the top 3. You know what I mean. But yes, just the color, the tiny details, the individuality of the bots, just all of that comes together to make this really fantastic set that I've probably been rambling on for a bit too long. So I'm going to stop here, but seriously, this Assault Force X is very cool, and it is definitely worth a look. So, thank you everybody for watching. Please, if you can, comment, subscribe, or any combination of those 3. I would greatly appreciate it. And as always, remember, art is more than meets the eye.